The storm came without mercy. A frozen alien city stood silent under a sky of endless white. Snow fell so thick and fast that tall buildings slowly vanished, swallowed by cold fog. The streets were empty. Doors were locked. Lights were off. Warning sirens cried again and again, sharp and loud. Remain indoors. Blizzard level extreme. Do not travel. No one listened outside. No one could. Against a broken metal wall, near a collapsed transit station, an alien widow sat on the frozen ground, her back pressed into ice-covered stone. Her arms were wrapped tightly around her children. She did not cry. She did not scream. She had no strength left for that. Her skin was blue and pale from the cold. Her hands shook as she tried to keep her children warm. They were small, too small for a night like this. Their eyes were half closed. Their breaths were weak and slow. The youngest child no longer moved. The widow gently shook him, whispering his name, but he did not answer. Her heart broke quietly inside her chest. Her mate, her husband, had died years ago in the Great War. Humans had fought against her people. Cities burned. Ships fell from the sky. Soldiers died screaming in space. Her husband never came home. Since then, her life had been a slow fall. No work, no help, no kindness. Other aliens passed her earlier that day. They saw her. They saw the children. They turned away. Some whispered, "Her mate died fighting humans." Others said, "Bad luck follows her." No one stopped. Now the storm had come, and the city had chosen who would live and who would be forgotten. The widow looked up at the white sky. Snow covered her hair, her face, her shoulders. She pulled her children closer and accepted the truth she had feared all day. They would not survive the night. Then she saw movement. At first, she thought it was a shadow. Then a shape appeared through the fog, tall, slow, steady. Heavy boots crushed ice with each step. A human. He walked alone through the storm, his coat covered in snow, his head lowered against the wind. His face was old and hard, carved by years of pain. One arm moved stiffly, damaged long ago. He was a veteran. Aliens hiding behind windows watched him pass. Some felt fear. Some felt hate. Human, one whispered. Monster, another thought. The human did not look at them. He had learned long ago how to walk unseen. Then he saw the widow. He stopped. The storm screamed around him, but he stood still. His eyes moved to the children, curled like small shadows in the snow. He saw the truth immediately. They were dying. The widow noticed him and felt fear crush her chest. She knew what humans had done. She knew what they were capable of. She pulled her children closer, turning her body to shield them. Her eyes burned with hate and pain. If this was how they died, she would not let him touch them. The human looked at the sky. The storm was growing worse. He looked at the buildings, no open doors, no lights. Then he looked at the children again. Something broke inside him. He remembered another storm, another world, another child crying while soldiers marched past. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully. The widow hissed in fear, ready to scream. But he stopped at a distance. He removed his gloves. His hands were rough and scarred, shaking from the cold. He lowered himself to one knee so he did not seem tall or strong. His voice was quiet, almost lost in the wind. "Come with me." The words were simple, not an order, not a threat, an offer. The widow stared at him, her mind filled with memories of fire and death. Humans had taken her husband. Humans had ruined her life. Why would this one help? Why now? The storm howled louder, as if pushing her to decide. Her child coughed weakly. Time was running out. She looked into the human's eyes and saw something she did not expect. Regret, pain, and a promise made without words. Still, she did not move. Because trusting a human meant facing the past she never escaped. And because one step toward him could save her children, or end everything forever. The widow did not answer. Snow fell between her and the human like a wall. The wind screamed, pushing ice into their faces. Her arms tightened around her children until her muscles burned. Her mind went back in time. She saw warships burning in the sky. She heard alarms, screams, and the deep sound of human weapons tearing through metal and flesh. She remembered her husband standing in their home, armor on, trying to smile. "I will return," he had said. He never did. Humans were the reason her children grew up without a father. Humans were the reason she slept hungry. Humans were the reason she sat here now, waiting for death. The human veteran did not move. He stayed on one knee, letting the snow cover his shoulders. He could feel the cold biting deep into his bones. His damaged arm ached badly, but he ignored it. He had seen this look before, fear mixed with hate. He deserved it. Behind frozen windows, aliens watched. Some whispered angrily. She should not listen to him. Humans only bring pain. A tall alien stepped closer, shouting through the storm, "Leave her alone, human." The veteran did not turn his head. He kept his eyes on the children. One of them shivered hard, then went still. The widow gasped. She shook the child again, harder this time. His eyes barely opened. His lips were blue. "No, no, please," she whispered. The human stood up slowly. He removed his heavy coat. The widow's eyes widened. Before she could speak, he walked forward and gently placed the coat over the smallest child. He did not touch the widow. He kept space between them, showing respect. The coat was warm, very warm. The child's shaking slowed. The widow felt confusion crash into her fear. The human stepped back again, his body now exposed to the storm. Snow soaked into his thin shirt. His breath came out in heavy clouds. "You'll freeze," the widow said without thinking. He gave a small, tired smile. "I've been cold before." She looked at his face. Up close, she saw deep lines around his eyes. Old scars crossed his skin. This was not a young killer. This was a man who had lived too long with memories he could not escape. "I was a soldier," he said, his voice steady but soft. "I followed orders. I hurt people." The widow's grip tightened. "I lost my family too," he continued. "Not to your kind, to the war itself." The storm paused for one quiet moment, as if listening. "I don't want to hurt anyone ever again," he said, "especially children." One of the older children looked up at him. Their eyes met his. The child did not scream. The child did not cry. He reached out slowly and touched the edge of the human's glove. The widow froze. Her heart pounded painfully. Aliens watching from nearby shelters gasped. "Did you see that?" The child touched him. The widow looked down at her children. They trusted her to choose. They depended on her, just like they always had. Her pride screamed at her to refuse. Her fear told her to stay. But her love for her children was stronger than both. The storm returned with full force. A loud crack echoed as a nearby structure collapsed under the snow. The human raised his voice just enough to be heard. "There's shelter not far from here," he said. "Old, forgotten, but warm." "Why should I trust you?" the widow asked, her voice shaking. He did not answer right away. Then he said the one thing she never expected. "You shouldn't." She stared at him. "I don't ask for trust," he continued. "Only time. If I wanted to hurt you, I would have done it already." The truth of his words hit her hard. The storm howled again. Her youngest child whimpered weakly. That sound broke her. Slowly, painfully, the widow stood up. Her legs shook. She almost fell. But the human stepped closer, not touching her, ready to catch her if she collapsed. She pulled her children close and looked at him. "If you lie," she said, "I will never forgive you." He nodded. "I wouldn't forgive myself either." She took one step toward him, then another. Behind them, the frozen city watched in silence. No one knew it yet, but this moment would be remembered long after the storm ended. The wind pushed hard against them as they moved. The human veteran walked in front, slow but steady, his boots breaking the deep snow. He did not rush. He did not look back too often. He wanted the widow to know he was not leading her into a trap. The widow followed, holding her children close. Every step hurt. Her legs felt weak. The storm pulled at her clothes, trying to drag her back into the frozen street. More than once, she almost fell. Each time, the human stopped and waited. They turned into a narrow passage between two ruined buildings. Snow had filled most of it, but the walls blocked some of the wind. The noise of the storm became softer, like a distant scream. The human stopped in front of a large metal door, half buried under ice. "This is it," he said. The widow's heart tightened. The place looked old, forgotten, dangerous. He placed his hand on a hidden panel and pressed it twice. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door hissed. Warm air rushed out. The widow gasped as heat touched her face for the first time in days. Her children made small sounds of relief, pressing closer to her chest. Inside, the shelter was dark but clean. Old human symbols covered the walls. A single light flickered on, reacting to movement. The human stepped aside and let them enter first. The widow noticed that. Inside, the door sealed shut behind them. The storm scream faded into silence. The warmth was real. The widow's knees gave out, and she sank to the floor. The children began to cry, not from fear, but from release. Their small bodies shook as feelings slowly returned to their hands and feet. The human moved quickly now. He activated heaters along the walls. Soft light filled the room. He pulled out thick blankets from a storage unit and placed them near the widow, still keeping distance. "Wrap them first," he said. She did. The children curled under the blankets, their breathing slowly becoming steady. Color returned to their faces. The smallest child finally opened his eyes fully. The widow pressed her forehead to the floor. She did not thank him yet. She was still afraid. The human walked to the far side of the shelter and sat down near the door. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes for a moment. His breathing was heavy. The cold had taken a lot from him. The widow watched him closely. He did not watch them. He did not move closer. He stayed near the exit, like a guard. Minute passed. The shelter hummed softly with power. Old machines worked quietly, doing their job even after years of silence. The widow's fear slowly changed into confusion. She had expected cruelty. She had expected demands. She had expected lies. Instead, she saw patience. After some time, the human stood up again and walked to a food unit. He pressed a button. The machine came to life, blinking slowly. It produced small, warm meal packs. He placed them on the floor between them and stepped back. "They're basic," he said, "but safe." The widow hesitated. Then hunger won. She fed the children first. They ate slowly, weak hands shaking. Each bite brought a little more life back into them. The widow ate last. Tears fell into her food, but she did not wipe them away. When they finished, silence filled the shelter again. The human spoke quietly. "You can rest here, I'll stay awake." The widow looked at him sharply. "You don't trust me?" she asked. He shook his head. "It's not about trust," he said. "It's about comfort." She did not understand at first. Then she realized what he meant. He wanted her to feel safe. That scared her more than the storm ever had. She lay down with her children, still watching him. Her body was warm, but her mind was restless. She noticed things now. The way he moved carefully, like every step hurt. The old military markings on his clothing. The faded symbols of rank. This was not just any human. This was someone who had seen the worst of the war. Hours passed. The storm outside continued, but it could not reach them. Finally, the widow spoke. Her voice was low. "Why did you choose us?" The human did not answer right away. He stared at the sealed door. Then he said, "Because once someone like me walked past a child like yours." He clenched his hand. And I never stopped hearing the sound of her crying. The widow's breath caught. She understood then. This shelter was not just a place. It was his punishment and his second chance. Outside, hidden sensors quietly activated. A signal began to spread. Someone or something had noticed human activity again. And the night was not finished yet. The shelter was quiet, but the silence did not feel safe. The widow lay awake, her children sleeping beside her. Their breaths were slow, and even now, warmth filled the room, yet her heart would not calm. Something felt wrong, like the air itself was waiting. The human veteran sat near the door, his back against the cold metal. His eyes were open. He had not slept. He felt it too. A soft sound came from the wall. Not loud, not sudden, a low pulse. The human looked up. His face hardened. Old sensors were waking up. He stood slowly and moved to a control panel. Lights blinked in dull colors. Messages scrolled in an old human language. The widow watched him carefully. "What is it?" she asked. "This shelter is not as forgotten as I hoped," he said. "Someone has noticed the power." Her heart jumped. "Who?" she asked. "Alien patrols," he answered. "And others." The widow pulled her children closer. "They will take my children," she said. "Or they will take you." The human shook his head. "They will not touch them," he said quietly. "Not while I am here." She did not understand how he could sound so calm. He turned to face her fully now. His voice softened. "There's something you should know," he said. She listened. "I did not come to this city to survive," he continued. "I came here to disappear." Her eyes widened. "After the war, I was praised," he said. "They called me brave. They gave me medals." He reached into his pocket and dropped small metal pieces onto the floor. They made sharp sounds as they hit. "They never asked what it cost," he said. He looked at his hands. "I followed orders," he said. "I told myself I had no choice." The widow said nothing. "I saw families run from fire," he continued. "I saw children hide and never come out." His voice cracked. "I told myself it was necessary." It took a deep breath. "But one day," he said, "I saw a mother holding her child in the snow." The widow felt her chest tighten. "She looked at me the way you looked at me today," he said. "And I walked past her." Silence filled the shelter. "She died," he whispered. "Both of them." The widow closed her eyes. "That sound never left me," he said, "no matter how far I ran." He looked up at her again. "When I saw you," he said, "I knew this was my last chance to choose differently." Tears filled the widow's eyes. "You think saving us will erase the past?" she asked. He shook his head. "No," he said, "but it might stop it from owning me." Suddenly, the shelter lights flickered. A sharp sound echoed outside. Metal footsteps. The children stirred. The human moved fast. "Stay here," he said. He stepped toward the door just as a loud voice boomed through the wall. "Human inside the structure," the voice said. "You're in violation of alien law. Exit immediately." The widow's fear returned full force. "Please," she whispered. "Run." The human did not move. He opened the door slowly. Cold air rushed in. Outside stood alien security forces, armored and armed. Their weapons glowed with energy. Cameras floated nearby, recording everything. "This is a restricted zone," an officer said. "You will surrender." The human raised his hands. "I will," he said. "But the family stays." The officer looked past him and saw the widow and children. "Why are they here?" the officer asked. "They were dying," the human replied. "I brought them inside." The officer's eyes narrowed. "You are a human war criminal," he said. "Your kind caused great suffering." The human nodded. "Yes," he said. "I did." The widow stood up. Her legs shook, but she stepped forward. "She speaks the truth," the officer said coldly. "Humans cannot be trusted." The widow felt something change inside her. She stepped in front of the human. "You are wrong," she said, her voice shaking but strong. "This human saved my children when your people walked away." The cameras turned toward her. The officer hesitated. "This human gave us warmth," she continued. "He gave us food. He gave us safety." The officer looked around. Other aliens had begun to gather, watching through the storm. The widow raised her head. "You ask why we are alive," she said. "Ask yourselves why no one else stopped." The crowd grew silent. Snow fell softly now. The officer lowered his weapon slightly. The human closed his eyes. Whatever happened next would not be his choice anymore. And across the city, across the galaxy, millions were watching. The storm outside slowly weakened, but the tension grew heavier. Alien security forces stood in a wide circle around the shelter. Their weapons were lowered, but not turned off. Bright camera drones floated in the air, sending live images across the city and far beyond it. The widow stood in front of the human veteran, her back straight, her children holding onto her clothes. She had never spoken to power before. Now the whole galaxy could hear her voice. "This human did not ask who we were," she said. "He did not ask about the war. He saw children freezing." And he stopped. The officer shifted uncomfortably. "Humans caused this war," he said. "Humans destroyed worlds." "Yes," the widow replied. "And so did others. War was not born from one species alone." A low murmur spread through the watching crowd. Screens lit up inside nearby buildings as citizens watched the scene live. Old soldiers, young workers, widows, and children stared in silence. The human veteran remained still. He did not speak. He did not defend himself. He had already said everything that mattered. The officer looked down at a datapad. "This human is listed as a former combat leader," he said. "Many will demand punishment." The widow turned slightly and looked at the human. "Do you deny this?" she asked softly. The human shook his head. "No," he said. "I will not deny what I did." Gasps Hoed. "He admits guilt," someone whispered. The officer raised his voice. "Why should we spare him?" he asked the crowd. "Why should a human be allowed mercy?" The widow answered before anyone else could. "Because mercy is how wars end," she said. Silence fell, like fresh snow. The officer stared at her. "You lost your mate to humans," he said. "Why protect one?" Her voice trembled, but she did not break. "Because my children are alive because of him," she said. "If I teach them hate, they will grow into another war." The children looked up at her. One of them stepped forward and held the human's damaged hand. The cameras zoomed in. The galaxy froze. A human soldier. Onedian child. Hands joined. The officer lowered his datapad. "This broadcast is spreading," he said quietly. "Public opinion is shifting." Messages flooded the network. He saved children. Not all humans are monsters. This is how peace begins. Old veterans watched from distant worlds, remembering their own choices. Mothers held their children tighter. The officer sighed. "There will be consequences," he said. The human nodded. "I know," he replied. "But not today," the officer continued. The widow's breath caught. "The council will review this case," the officer said. "Until then, the family will be placed under protection." "And the human?" someone shouted. The officer looked at the veteran. "He will remain free," he said, "under watch." The human did not smile. Freedom was not what he wanted. The crowd slowly dispersed. Weapons powered down. The storm faded into soft snowfall. The shelter door closed again. Inside, the widow finally allowed her knees to weaken. She sat down, shaking. The children hugged her, crying quietly. The human stepped back toward the wall. "You should not have done that," he said softly. "It may cost you." She looked up at him. "It already did," she replied. "The day my mate died." They sat in silence. Later, aid arrived. Medical drones checked the children. Warm clothing and supplies were delivered. Alien workers avoided looking at the human at first. Then one of them stopped. "Thank you," the worker said quietly. The human nodded. Hours passed. The storm ended. For the first time in days, the sky cleared. The widow stood beside the human at the shelter entrance. Cold air brushed their faces, but it no longer felt deadly. "What will you do now?" she asked. He thought for a long moment. "I don't know," he said. "I never planned to live past tonight." She looked at her children. "They need someone strong," she said. "Not a soldier, a guide." He met her eyes. "For them," he said slowly, "I can try." Above the city, the broadcast finally ended. But across the galaxy, something had changed. People were no longer asking what humans had done in the past. They were asking what they could choose to do next. And that question frightened old powers more than any weapon ever had. Morning came slowly to the frozen city. The storm was gone. Soft light touched the snow-covered buildings, turning the white streets into gold. For the first time, in many days, people stepped outside. Doors opened, windows lifted. Life returned. The widow stood near the shelter entrance with her children beside her. They were wrapped in clean clothes now, warm and safe. Their faces looked alive again. Their eyes held curiosity instead of fear. The human veteran stood a short distance away. He did not stand like a hero. He stood like a man waiting for judgment. Alien Council transports arrived quietly. They did not bring weapons. They brought recorders, officials, and watchers. This was no longer a simple arrest. It was history. An elder from the council stepped forward. Her voice was calm but strong. "Human veteran," she said, "you are known across this system for your actions in the war." The human bowed his head. "I accept what I was," he said. The elder paused. "But today," she continued, "we have witnessed what you chose to become." The widow felt her breath stop. The elder turned to the crowd. "For many cycles, we taught our children that humans are monsters," she said. "And humans taught their children the same about us." She gestured toward the children. Yet when no one else stopped, a human did. Silence spread across the square. "Fear kept this city warm," the elder said. "But compassion saved lives." The human lifted his head slowly. The elder raised her staff. "By council authority," she declared, "this human will not be punished." Gasps echoed. "He will be offered a place here," she continued. "Not as a soldier, not as a weapon." She looked directly at him, but as a protector. The word hit harder than any sentence. Protector. The human felt his chest tighten. The widow stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "My children have no father," she said. "But today they learned what courage looks like." One of the children walked toward the human and hugged his leg. The human froze. Slowly, Carefully, he placed a hand on the child's back. He did not cry, but his eyes burned. The elder nodded. "This moment will be recorded," she said, and shone across the galaxy. Later that day, aid ships arrived. Other widows were found. Other children were saved. People who had once walked past suffering now stopped. They remembered the image. A human kneeling in the snow. 2 words spoken without force. "Come with me." The human veteran was given a small home near the shelter. Nothing special. Nothing grand. He did not ask for more. Each morning, he walked the city streets, not in armor, but in simple clothes. People still stared. Some still feared him, but some nodded. Some smiled. The widow watched him help rebuild damaged homes. She watched him teach children how to fix heaters and clean water units. She watched him laugh once. It surprised her. One evening, as the city lights glowed softly, she stood beside him. "You changed the galaxy," she said. He shook his head. "No," he replied. "I only stopped." She did not argue. Far away, on human worlds, the broadcast played again and again. Veterans watched in silence. Young soldiers asked questions. Commanders felt uncomfortable. Because this story did not glorify war, it showed something more dangerous: choice. The galaxy named the event many things. The blizzard moment, the human who stopped. But among the children, it was called something else. The day humanity arrived. The human veteran stood at the window that night, looking at the quiet city. For the first time since the war, he slept without hearing screams. For the first time, his hands were not stained with memory. He was not forgiven by the past. But he was useful to the future. And in a galaxy built on fear, that was enough to change everything.